Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. Agnes Gund has added beauty and spirit to our lives with her incredible support of art and art institutions and artists, and her enthusiastic engagement in the world around her. And I'm so pleased that you are my guest today. So welcome. I think most New Yorkers know you because from your relationship with the Museum of Modern Art. Been there. You have participated in their affairs and been the head of it for quite a while. But you have this fancy term now.
Emerita. Yeah,
right.
President Emerita.
Yeah. So tell us, you've had an exciting tenure there. You went through the rebuilding of the buildings. A large acquisition of art since you've been there, or what?
Well, we've had very exciting times. Since I started way back when I was really only in my 20s, I began first by being a member in 1967 of the International Council, which I'm now luckily chairman. I'm chairman to an incredible president, Joe Carroll Lauder, so I don't have to do anything.
That's
it's just a figurehead position. But I was a very young member of that organization, so I got to know a group of collectors that were interested in the modern. So I got to know it sort of from the outside in. And then I began to be a collector, on the position where collectors were, which was the P&S committee, or the Painting and Sculpture Committee, which is a very interesting, probably the most interesting committee, I think, on the modern board, because on that committee you get to choose what is acquired in painting and sculpture. And it's a committee that I've hardly missed any of the meetings of, because I just am so fascinated. And now when I go through the museum, I see works of art and I can remember when we collected them and what happened and who was there. And many of the people aren't with us anymore. I, for instance, can remember Gordon Bunshaft, who used to sort of growl about certain things we collected and say, oh, that's just one of Aggie's things, when it was something particularly he didn't like.
So how do you go about, it's such an interesting thing, how do you go about acquiring artwork?
Well,
does the artist come to you, or do you go to the artist, or how does that work?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because many people think that the trustees can bring a work of art in and say, we want to have this. Yeah. It's not that way at all. The curators bring it in, and it's definitely a curator-presented work of art. So if they want to have something in the collection, they bring it in. They usually discuss it with other curators before they bring it in. Then they present it in front of the committee, and then they give reasons. The curator that's presenting it gives reasons as to why they want it, why it fits in the collection, why they think it's appropriate to have, what other works of art by that artist they have, and then they ask for a vote of the people that are there at the meeting. There's usually some discussion. If it's a gift by somebody, there's a lot of really more praise of the person that's giving it. Although now we don't usually say who's giving it, or if we do say who's the gift giver, we ask that person to step out of the room so that there can be.
So some people will give it, and other times the museum has to acquire it with its own money.
Yes, you have to buy it.
And does a majority vote just purchase it?
Yes, if it's a majority of vote, we purchase it, or we thank very much the giver for it. Sometimes we have to deaccession in order to purchase it, or we have to go. That means that
you're going to sell part of your collection.
We have to look for funds outside those funds that we can get from the members of the committee, or we can get from a donor who will partially give it and ask for other funds. The funds that we have don't come from the budget. There's no money in the museum's budget for either exhibitions or acquisitions in any department. So those all have to be raised.
That's interesting. So our money, when we go in and pay an admission, doesn't go to acquiring.
And so there usually is a fee for joining a committee. You have to pay a certain amount to be a member. That's why sometimes people don't want to join the committee because they don't want to pay the fee, whatever it is.
How many curators are there?
Well, it depends on the committee. I mean, the department.
Yeah,
some departments have more. Painting and sculpture has different ranks of curators, but I think there are about up to 22 or so curators now of different ranks. There are people like Kiniston, McShine, that have a very high rank, as does John Elderfield. Kiniston has been there a very long time, and John is, of course, the major curator there. So they're very the top curators, and then they move down the ranks. They're curators that do different things that are more important to registrar or do work with loans and do work with keeping track of the pictures in the collection.
Levels,
and there are other ones like Ann Temkin that just came in, or Joachim Bizarro, that work carefully with the going out and looking for new purchases.
Is the film library, the films that you show, are they owned by the, I mean, that's not a, I mean, that's just a copy of a film.
Yes.
How does that work?
Many of them are owned by the museum, but many of them are also borrowed to be shown. We'd like to get film donations, and we get them sometimes by the directors or the film makers themselves. The producers sometimes give it, the film companies give it. But we really, the preservation of films is very expensive. We do have a film preservation center that was paid for in large part by the Bartoses, Celeste Bartos, who was the former chair of the film department, trustee chair, and was a wonderful, a very devoted film person. And that's in Harlan, Pennsylvania, and that's a state-of-the-art film preservation center. And we've been one of the main places for film preservation in the country. We, in fact, received many years ago an Oscar for that when Dick Oldenburg was the director, and he and Blanchette Rockefeller went out to receive that Oscar. So were you born with an interest and appreciation of art? Well, I was lucky because I had a family that did care about art. It was a little different art than what I collect. My father and mother were both interested in art. My mother had I think a stronger history of art appreciation. My father was more interested in Western art, although his background, his family had other kinds of art. He collected some Sorolla, the Spanish artist, some German art. My mother had both of the German and some English art, and they had it all. The thing was, they had it all over the house. All the walls, a lot of sculpture was on tables and such. And I was very much used to everything being covered with art. So that's the way we live now. And it's hard for me, as I've said to many people, and they think it's sort of crazy, to go into a house that doesn't have any art, where the walls are all bare. I get sort of almost scared to be in empty houses, empty of things, because I feel kind of almost lonely, or as if I'm in a an abandoned place. I read someplace that you like light. Yes, no, it's very important. Does that have an effect on the kind of art that you gravitated to? Well, it does on the kind that I collect. I would have liked to really have loved to collect old master drawings. I think drawings are the heart and sort of soul of an artist's work. I think that an artist can really express the most of their feelings about their art, or the most of what they feel, by doing drawings, because I think drawings are the really
Very basic,
Yeah,
aren't
the
they?
very basic,
Yeah.
and tell the most. I mean, I think if you look at a drawing compared to, say, a painting or even a piece of sculpture, it has the details in it that I think you see that when you look at a Van Gogh or Da Vinci or even a Raphael, even a Rubens. The
drawings,
now
yeah.
talking about some of the great shows the Met has had of drawings, and that you see that force that you can get in within the drawings. And I think in those kinds of things you really, I would have liked to have had them, but you have to have a darkened house. You know, when you go into a room, even in the Munch show, we have rooms where the prints are that are much darker. The lights are not so strong in the areas where we have the prints lined up, or if you go into the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, you go into the rooms where the pastels are of Degas, and it's very dark compared to the rooms where the paintings are. And I get really nervous with those darkened rooms. I keep looking up and wondering why they turned out the lights or why the shades have to be down. I was in Jean Thaw's house. Jean Thaw is one of the great collectors, as you can be attested by going into the Morgan and seeing his works that he donated there. He's a great collector of drawings and a great collector. And I was in his house once and his shades were all down and the curtains drawn. And I thought, boy, these are gorgeous things, but what a way to live. And it's no wonder he gave
contemporary art.
I do now.
What's the difference between contemporary and modern art?
Well, I think a lot of people wonder what it is, but I think it's modern art, of course, keeps moving up as the years keep coming on. But modern art, I think, is thought of really from the late 19th century back.
Right.
But now you'd have to put it up closer to mid 20th century and talk about the people from before mid 20th century, really before the 50s, as modern art. A lot of people say modern art is those guys that have died, but then if you're going to say modern art, you'd have to then include, say, Warhol.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Warhol is in the pantheon of modern artists, but I think he's still considered contemporary because he is so much a part of what contemporary artists are about.
The world around it,
and what they're still doing and taking from Warhol. But I think it won't be long before he's well considered a modern artist. I think it would be good to say the late 19th century. From
interesting. The art world is not known for being so friendly to women. I mean, I think it's changing, but women artists, curators, right? How has it been for collectors?
Well, I sometimes think, I look around the house and I think, because people ask me, have I collected women artists? I've collected a lot of women artists in, I think, the last couple decades. But at first I didn't have many women artists, but that was because there weren't many women artists to collect. There weren't in the 50s, the 40s and 50s, 60s even, there weren't many women artists working. Also, the women artists that were working, I don't think got the attention, like Joan Mitchell.
Right.
I think she was an extraordinarily gifted artist, but Louise Bourgeois, she never got her due until she's been an older woman.
Right.
And until the great show that she did at the Museum of Modern Art.
So the women's movement helped then?
Yeah, I think it's helped. And I think also people that have had the nerve to do shows of hers, because her art was considered very erotic and considered something that, you didn't want to put into people's faces. And would it be acceptable as seriously important art? And I think the few that were important and were shown, like Marisol and Louise Nevelson and Helen Frankenthaler were actually known and liked because of who they were. Elaine de Kooning, some of who they were married to, Lee Krasner, what the flair they had, the flamboyance they had, the sexual relationships, all those things that
they had to be bigger than life.
Yeah, that I think shouldn't be why an artist is known.
So being a woman, was that when you when you were the chair of the museum, you didn't suffer from any of that kind of thing, or?
Well, I think being
some of your trustees think they knew more than you did.
Well, a lot of them, I think. No, I felt being the kind of woman I am was a drawback because I'm fairly emotional. I don't have the confidence. Maybe I should. I do tend to get I do tend to burst into tears. I always used to think Muskie.
You understood it, so did I.
I understood Muskie's problem because it wasn't good for a man to cry, but it isn't also good for a woman to cry, even though
or
they
it's
say
all right
women,
for everybody to cry. I mean, yeah.
Either that, if you believe that, but most men don't believe that, and people don't believe a display of that should come at any time, even if they do. And on the other hand, believe that a woman like Hillary is too tough.
Yeah.
They don't believe that a woman should be, a sopping rag of a woman, and that doesn't go with business, and it doesn't go with a position where you're supposed to be tough and able to be very acute, and that if you're financially acute, you can't be also emotionally flexible
and attached to certain things. So it's Aggie's art, right?
Yeah. So, but the thing that I also think is people think that if you can have a feeling for art, you can't have a feeling for finance or a feeling for what's good for a museum. I think people separate those two things, or think that if a museum can only be, successful if it's run like a business. And I don't think museums should be run like businesses. I really don't agree with that, even though I think I'm probably in a minority of women as well as men. But I think they should be run like as museums, because they were successful when they were run as museums. I know they were different kinds of things back with the Rormers and the persons that ran the National Gallery and his name I'm forgetting.
I just want it to be, and I want to change the subject because we're running out of time and we have so much to talk about, which is just too much. You're this gentle soul. It's so wonderful to meet you, and you're so committed to all of these different things. But there is this certain, and you're interested in the world around you. I mean, you're known for Studio in School, which was a wonderful program. It is a wonderful program, right? It's in like 150 schools now. When the arts program in the public school system was cut, you guys went in and really substituted for it. It's a wonderful school. But essentially, the art world is a very elitist world. How do we, I mean, as we're talking, I'm trying to think of how do you open it up? Is that part of why you say a museum shouldn't be run like a business?
Well, I think it's become less of an elitist world. I do think it will always be elitist because people will always see that, they will always think those people that can afford to buy art have traditionally been people that have had money, or can afford to be on museum boards have to be people that have money. But I think that people can go to museums and enjoy art that don't necessarily have money, that you can collect without having a lot of money, that you can also have a form of understanding of art that now is available, like everything is on the internet, that you can really have a great deal of breadth in learning through all kinds of books and all kinds of a range of things. I mean, anybody can read about some of the great collectors, and some of the great collectors have been women. I mean, look at the the breadth of women collectors, starting with Louisine Havenmeyer, who was an extraordinary collector, and you can go on and on about all these different collectors. Isabel Stewart Gardner, who, if anyone has time, they should go in Boston and see this incredible place that she started, and some of the great people that have been painted and have of women. And I'm not just stressing women, because of course they're in our city, great places like the Morgan and the Frick.
And when you say you don't like, you get nervous when you go into a place and it's got empty walls. I mean, people can have reproductions, or they can have their own art, or they can have the children's art, or they right?
Or they can have postcards, or they can have a collection of, you know, those snow cones, or they can have. There's one wonderful film curator at the museum that has these wonderful, all these different snow. You turn them over and snow globes, and she has loads of them on her desks, and you go in and you see it, and you never forget the collection. You always want to buy her one of that.
So, I mean, the world is filled with art. It's just that you have to find it.
And all kinds of different kinds. And you can have the tiniest of apartments and still have collections of things that are from all kinds of different things. I mean, Bakelite, like Bakelite. How Bakelite got to be, people don't know, I guess, but during the Depression, it was because there was this material, plastic, and it was cheap, and so that was what it was made out of.
And now it's getting more and more expensive.
You go and try to collect it.
But I think what bridges it with you also is that you speak out and you participate in the world around you and the community, and so I wanted to just get a little flavor of a little of your, you know, your awareness of the politics and your participation in it. But before that, and we only have 5 minutes. You were on the board.
That's too bad.
You were on the board of the World Trade Center Memorial Foundation, and that's the kind of thing that warmed my heart. I mean, when you resigned, because it's not a separate world you're living in. You know, you're living in the same world that everybody else is, right?
Yeah. Well, I was sorry. I didn't feel that was so good a thing, because I didn't like, especially, to let John Whitehead down. I admire and really respect John. I think he has done an extremely good job. So I was very distressed to let him down. I just felt that you have to work together. People, have to work together. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Have to work together, all together, to bring something about, and I felt that it wasn't going that way.
What happened was that the Drawing Center and what's the
Freedom
Center
were going to be in this wonderfully designed building. I had been on that architectural selection committee that had picked Snoetta, which was this Norwegian film firm that was a wonderful firm. I think we had no building designed by them in the United States, and they selected or drew a building and designed a building that I think would have been fabulous on that site, because it it raised itself up from the ground so that you could have gone right to the Path Center, the wonderful Calatrava building. And you wouldn't have, sight lines wouldn't have interfered there from the memorial, so you would have seen through to the Calatrava, and you would have had that airy space there. And then the way it was going to bring itself up, it was quite low, and the way it would have allowed for both the drawing centers on one side and the magical kind of light that it would have had at night would have made it just a very welcoming and wonderful kind of building to be set down there. And I think it would have blended very well and been a kind of a very soft and welcoming beacon for the memorial area. And I really do believe, whether people think so or not, that you need something for the people that live there, for the people that come there once they've been to the memorial, and if they have been to the memorial beforehand, you need something else to welcome them there, to allow them to have some of the good that
Right.
is on earth besides the tragedy of that day, that we all are, as I think, not equally to the people that lost people, but all very much a part of. And I thought that that would be a good thing for us to have, and that we have to build up that area, because there are lots of people that live there, lots of people that go to school there. We want to have more people come there. We don't want it to be a place that just is about the dead, but we want it to be a place where there are people living. And so I thought it needed to have those things, and right there that it can't be just thought of as a memorial. No memorials in this country are without having a surround of active spaces and places. We don't have that with the Vietnam Memorial. It's surrounded by other things that are accessible.
Totally accessible, yeah.
So
and what happened was that what happened was the whole building went, or just
no,
the two
they
groups?
They didn't want to have those things
Those
in
occupants.
those occupants in that place. They wanted to have it only to be connected with the memorial. I had worked on other parts. I wasn't just on that board. I was head of the program committee.
I
and
have to
other
tell you
things.
that
So
we've come to the end of this program, which I can't believe. So I hope that we're going to be able to continue this conversation at another time. But it's fascinating, and we could spend all day having this nice discussion. Thank you very much,
Thank
Agnes
you,
Gund.
Ronnie. It was nice to talk to you.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.